overall blueprint or the big picture and the elements, let's look at some of the subcomponents of it. The first one of those is we're going to look at roles. Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that everybody understands that these aren't things that we're going, okay, here's where we found chapter and verse, what these roles are, and all that kind of stuff, and there's specific titles that we found biblically. These are just titles or labels. What we've done is we've sort of said, here's the kind of skills, if you will, or the qualities that are associated with different kinds of involvement in ministry, teaching, leadership, etc. And we've sort of slap titles onto them. So we're calling them roles. If you really think about it, it's a set of skills or quality associated with a role which makes you able to do certain kinds of ministry. And so we're gonna go through those. The first one, there's 6 of them, and the first one is a learner, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that, but we all have to be learners. The 3 in the middle, if you will, are the facilitator, the presenter, and the teacher. And this is really what we're targeting. These are, for this whole blueprint, we're targeting the development of the facilitator, presenter, and teacher type of skills. And then we have the evaluator and mentor. And these are very senior people. These are very experienced people. These are your guys who've been in ministry for many, many years and are able to provide. They kind of already developed it, and we're, again, going to talk about those people. But the emphasis of this is going to be on the facilitator, the presenter, and the teacher. So let's first look at the learner, though. The learner is all of us. We all have to be learners. We have to presume that. Because if we're not people who are learners and teachable folks, what good are we? We can't say, hey, I've arrived. If we believe that we've arrived in knowing God fully and completely and we understand the Scriptures, we can just hang it up right there. So the learner, we expect not only to have development of theologic knowledge, but also practical skills and knowledge. Not just, hey, I'm book smart, but I'm people smart, I'm ministry smart. So they have to continue to learn. Their skills and their knowledge base and their abilities as a learner need to be at an appropriate level before you hand certain responsibilities over to them. And that's, again, all of us need to be developing in those areas. And, of course, solid character comes along with that. We're not just growing in our knowledge, we're not just growing on our skills, but we're growing in grace in our character, and it should be reflected as we learn and grow in those areas. So that's just who we all ought to be, and we should be seeing that kind of attitude in anybody who's involved in this process. So now let's focus on the next 3. The first one we're going to look at is the facilitator. And this is something you probably already practice, is something you probably see, and this will be pretty obvious. But the facilitator is somebody we say, okay, they lead a discussion. They're the person who you can sort of say, here's a group, lead the discussion. And what they're going to be leading the discussion over is approved materials. In other words, they're not having to make it up. They're not having to create it. They're not having to do anything with it. It's approved materials. Here's the book. Here's the video. Here's the audio, whatever it happens to be. Here's the sermon you've already heard. But one of the key things about this facilitator is they're the ones who are facilitating a group of people who all have seen, read, looked at, heard the same material. So everybody in the group has the same background, the same knowledge. The facilitator, of course, we want them to have a little bit stronger knowledge, and they have some skills that are demonstrated. So they've got to have that solid biblical knowledge. They have to have the ability to guide a group, and they have to be able to interact well with people. They can't just be, hey, I'm smart, I'm going to tell you what to do. That's not facilitating. That's just dictating, and that's not what we're looking for. They also have to be somebody who can handle questions well. We don't expect them to be the all-knowing everything. Matter of fact, sometimes the best facilitators going, I don't know. I don't understand what the right answer is on this. So I can't answer that question, but I can go find out. Or they're able to handle questions within that topic and subject matter. Again, they have to have some of that biblical knowledge. So it's not just anybody who can get along with folks. It's somebody who actually does have some skill. Matter of fact, that's probably a lot harder for many people than it looks. Because some people want to just take over, but they forget that my job is to facilitate, to coordinate, to help move the discussion along. Next we move to the presenter then. And the presenter is another level of skill. There's similar characteristics to a facilitator. There's similar types of things that a presenter would have to do. And if we're all honest, very often we actually act as presenters most of the time. And here's why. The presenter is the one who now has to take materials, and again, approved materials, that the other people in this group or this one-on-one or whatever it happens to be have not seen. So we basically say, I'm entrusting you, presenter, I trust your knowledge and your ability to read and understand, that you can take this material that we say is good stuff, and you can organize it, communicate it, prepare it, understand it, and then effectively present that material to a group. You're not having to dig it all out all by yourself, but you have to take what is available and organize it. So they've got to read, they've got to outline, they've got to do all the different aspects of things that somebody who might be standing in the pulpit. See, I'm looking at notes right here. See, I'm presenting information that's pre-approved. I wrote it, but it's still pre-approved. The other thing is, of course, the presenter has to handle questions well, and that includes unrelated topics. So we'd expect a little bit more skill out of somebody who's a presenter, because if the people have not already seen the material, it might stimulate questions that are kind of off topic, and they have to be able to answer and deal with those things in a related area. So that's an important aspect that we want to see in a presenter. They also should be starting to develop what we could consider good hermeneutical skills or Bible study skills. So if they're going to be reading something that's approved, but they need to be able to start analyzing it, see what's happening, look at the scriptures, look at other kinds of information and say, hey, I'm beginning to understand how to handle it. I know how to ask the right questions to see what I need to do. What's the important points? What's the lesser important points? What are some of the points of application? And so we would expect them to be developing those good hermeneutical skills and Bible study methods. So then we come to the last of the key elements, and this is the person that we would call a teacher. And we're not trying to fit a biblical definition over the top of it, but this definition kind of does ally itself with the Bible. The difference between that presenter who can take material that's approved and present it well, the teacher has to be able to have the skill to say, okay, here's John chapter 2, and we want you to take that and we want you to teach a class on it. They have to be able to take material, have to be able to take scripture, and they have to be able to develop it. They have to develop their materials. They have to present it to the group. They should have very strong hermeneutical skills and Bible study methods. These are people that really you can turn them loose, and they're very gifted in understanding the scriptures. They also have to, of course, be able to handle questions well. And in this area, we would expect these type of people to be able to handle questions well, but give even more counsel than that. These are people who are very experienced, understand the Bible, know how to apply it, because as they teach, there's going to be different kinds of information that's going to come out in different questions, and they don't have a book to fall back on. They don't have a video to fall back on. They have to understand it, handle it well, and be able to do that kind of work. So if you see these three developments of the facilitator taking approved material that everybody has and helping lead discussions through it, to a presenter taking things that are approved but others have not seen it and develop it and present it, all the way to the teacher who is then going to be able to actually draw out material, put it all together, present, counsel, and do all those different kinds of things. So now we come to the last two, and this is the evaluator and the mentor. And the evaluator is somebody we would expect to already have very strong teaching skills. That's presumed. They already have those skills. And they have extensive teaching or preaching experience. But it doesn't just stop there. It's somebody who has the ability to assess the skills and give instructive feedback. And it's not just I can preach well, but I can actually listen to you. I can see what you're doing. I can handle what's going on. I can think about it and say, okay, you could have handled this a little bit differently. Or here's maybe a way that you kind of wandered off topic a little bit too far. Or maybe your timing was off in something. So they can give instructive feedback. They can say, hey, that was fabulous. You've improved 100% since last time. Not just their own ability, but the ability to evaluate and provide feedback. So that's the evaluator. And the last person, and this is, honestly, there aren't a lot of people that you would really classify in this area, is the mentor. And this is somebody who is able to instruct and guide individuals at very advanced theologic levels, in practical ministry, primarily associated with pastoral ministry. They have these skills to be able to do this. And typically, not always, but typically, there's some area of specialty or some expertise that they have just years and years and years and years of experience. It may be counseling. It may be teaching some big theologic topic. It may be languages. It may be whatever it happens to be. They are people who have deep and rich experience that if, hey, I have a question, I have a problem, I've done everything I can do, who do you go to? You go to the mentor. And some churches have people of that quality, and most of us find that those are the people we find outside of our ministry. It's other pastors, other leaders that we recognize and say, hey, I can ask this guy questions and he can give me good answers. And so that's the kind of person that would be a mentor. So as you can see, we all have to be learners. And we're going to develop in our skills from a facilitator to a presenter to a teacher. And once that gifting is there and demonstrated, now we have years of experience who then can say, I can now evaluate, I can provide feedback. Now remember, there will be lots of people who will provide you feedback, but that doesn't mean they're a good evaluator. As we all know, we get plenty of critiques on our sermons and lessons and things like that. And then finally, the truly gifted, seasoned sage, if you will, the mentor. And that's, again, the development all the way from the very beginning of learning all the way to that person that you're really going to be looking to. So that is all we're going to talk about in those roles. But again, I hope you get the idea, and this gives you some good fodder to work from and to start looking at your own people and say, how many facilitators do I have? How many teachers do I have? How many presenters do I have? Do I have any mentors, evaluators, etc.? So we'll go on from there, and we'll ask questions at a later time.